time for another wrestling fan open mic night. A review from Gavin Knotts, your favorite part-time podcast host. The YouTube channel that's bringing you the news. If you like wrestling and you like people who talk about wrestling, Gavin Knotts is here for you. And tonight, Gavin Knotts is going to host another wrestling fan open mic night, where he shares his opinions on wrestling. A wrestling view. Gavin Knotts is going to host another wrestling fan open mic night, where he shares his opinions on wrestling.
Hi guys, and welcome to Open Mic Night. As always, I'm your host Gavin Knotts. Fletcher always gives you honesty since 2010 about professional wrestling. No matter if it's giving you thoughts and opinions towards Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, AEW Dynamite, anything that I want to talk about professional wrestling, I will exclusively upload it to here, right here on YouTube.com. And I can't believe, I just want to say this, thank you ever so much for the 10 people that have given me subscribers so far. Since the launch of this channel only over a week ago, and you guys make it possible for what professional wrestling is all about. Honesty and respectability towards professional wrestling. You know, I enjoy giving my hot take towards obviously what happens in the wrestling world. End of the day, I'm not one of these corporate drones that will sugarcoat professional wrestling just to try and get a view on a video or get appearance on a Monday Night Raw from using my live reactions or something like that. I don't do live reactions, I just do possibly a live broadcast through over on TikTok. So that's another platform you can get me on. All my links are on the link tree down below. I can't stress you enough, from my Instagram to obviously my other channels, towards obviously giving you wrestling vlogs, as well as obviously wrestling vlogs are banned from YouTube due to some reason they don't like it when I actually uploaded them, so I put them over onto Daily Motion. Then I've got my TikTok, where I actually give you my shorthand of what happens in the professional wrestling world. So if you do support me on this journey on Open Mic Night, fear not, I'm thinking of getting guests on, obviously with me in the duration in the near distant future, to talk about their passions towards professional wrestling. Doesn't mean if they watch the weekly product or the pay-per-view product. They could be cosplayers, they could be figure collectors, or people that run a business that sell autographs, or even professional wrestlers themselves. And in due course, obviously, if you like the whole idea of what I want to bring to obviously here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you'll be notified at any time. There's no charge for subscribers, but I just want to say this, over 200 people have checked out this channel and not even hit that subscribe button. But to say I've got 10 of you guys, that proves how loyal you are. You know I've got over 1,000 over on the Gavin Knotts channel, on my link tree where all my vlogs are. That channel is blossoming in itself. The next vlog will be obviously at Forbidden Door. I'm looking forward to putting that together with my good old friend Paddy from Wrestling Nerds. So I just want to say this, that I am so grateful for the people that are actually supporting that as long as obviously my journey here on Open Mic Night. I can't thank you enough, because at the end of the day, I do love talking about professional wrestling to the next person, but I've helped people over the duration being onto YouTube, help people be confident in themselves to talk about professional wrestling through the embarrassing stages. Obviously back in 2010 to 11, I had no end of people thanking me for my content, and then I gave up reviewing professional wrestling because it took a lot out of me. I'll be honest with you, I was jumbling a job at the time. Currently, yes, I know I'm unemployed, but I just want to point this out to you guys, is that it just blows my mind that how many people, you guys, that want to support my journey here on YouTube.com. You know I don't expect much. Even if one person watches the videos, I've appealed to that one person. I've said this for many years, but to the people that gain momentum to me to share my experiences, meeting professional wrestlers or going to wrestling shows, and and improving my editing skills along the way. Just to let you know, I'm dyslexic, and I've had to put it, self-taught myself to improve myself, if that makes any sense to any one of you guys, because at the end of the day, yes, I know I'm unemployed at the moment, yes, I'm currently looking, that's why that majority takes most of my time. Yes, I've done courses in duration since I've been unemployed near enough a year, if not a year now. So it sucks being unemployed, but you gotta take the rough with the smooth, don't you? And I can tell you one thing, I do have a glamorous background, I must say. It doesn't look great, I know, on camera. At some point I will get a green screen, but I'm going to find a way to sort of fit it into my room, you might want to say, because it's like a tight, snug room, but I love my tight, snug room, since moving to this new house. Now, I want to say to you guys is that on this hot take on this special video for you guys today, I've been watching AEW since the progression, obviously since 2019. Now, I just want to point out to everyone out there, right, that I look at Will Ospreay, right? I've watched that kid grow up in the wrestling business, and being the name he is today. And he's one of those guys that are very unpredictable in the ring. You never know what he's going to do next. Now, with Will Ospreay, I am an avid fan of him. I respect him. I gave him such an ego boost when I first ever met him back in 2013. You can see that photo that I think I shared on Instagram. If you scroll through them, like all the wrestlers that I've met, close if not over 300 now, that I literally says, you'll go far, you are the next AJ Styles, hands down, with this boom period. I hope you go really well. And he appreciated everything that I said to him. I met him on the same show as Pete Dunne, and that just shows you how small the wrestling world is. And it's gone from strength to strength, from obviously doing the independent scene here in the United Kingdom to doing the likes of New Japan Pro Wrestling, towards independent shows. He's created his craft. He literally has created the world behind him. I love the way I've come across people on TikTok that don't like him, and I'm thinking to myself, what is not to like about him? And he's got that likable charisma that you can relate to, because he's unpredictable, like he is in the ring or like he is on the mic. You don't know what he's going to say, but when he speaks like a true Brit would. But I tell you one thing, he is talented for what he does. But the thing is, when I look at the bigger spectrum of certain things towards obviously the likes of Will Ospreay and his journey to AEW, yeah, fair enough, people may have thought, oh, rush him into the title spot. Yes, I know he had the Intercontinental Championship when he first started. He was pretty much handed that like a silver platter. But since then, he's not had a title since, if I recall. In the likes of AEW, he may have had a little bit of a run with a New Japan Pro Wrestling title, or was that just before his AEW run? But he's always fond of New Japan, and the way people speculated him going WWE, I know full well he wouldn't. Not just because of obviously the workload that he actually puts in. It's just like how you put it in the politest terms. Family values, yes, that's one of them, but people thought it was just because of the money that Tony Khan handed him. But I'm not being funny. When I look at the likes of Will Ospreay, I feel like the WWE wouldn't know what to do with him. It's a prime example. It's a prime example when you look at the like of Ricochet, when he went into the WWE, they did not know how to handle him. And with that said, the AEW's handled him perfectly. You know, he's found his feet, he's found himself at home, he's adapted to the American sort of style, sort of thing, even though he's just the way he has been for many years. But that's what I mean. I feel like with him being in the WWE, he would be watered down. And I look at this sort of prime example for that. I think he would have been the face of NXT. Now, that's not me disrespecting Will Ospreay, that's just me thinking as a wrestling fan. Because I look at the main roster, what you're actually doing with the likes of Finn Balor, the likes of AJ Styles, the likes of JD Madowan, formerly known as Jordan Devlin. That's just named but a few. But then you look at the likes of what they are bringing in from the likes of AAA, and keep it, by looks of it, they're keeping it as its own entity. But yeah, they're going to change a lot of things, like I've already mentioned on one of the hot take videos that I did. If not last week, it was the week after, week before, sorry. And I feel so sorry for that brand, but I look at this is the problem where it lies, right? I feel that he would not suit the WWE main roster criteria, let alone I think he would have been technically the poster boy for this deal, you know, because he can actually adapt himself to different styles. Look at what he's been doing throughout his career, you know, and I'm intrigued about the two different styles between him and Hangman Adam Page at Double or Nothing. That's what excites me for it, because I think this is going to be a clinic of a match. It's going to be an instant classic for a final, for a tournament that is named by the late great Owen Hart. You know, Martha Hart gave the go ahead, and since that tournament's been basically been in existence, that tournament's been fire every year. It tops itself every year. You know, it sets the benchmark. Yeah, the first year was so predictable, but this year was not so predictable. Then obviously, same with the women's. You know, I'm looking forward to that match between the two women of the likes of Jamie Hayter and Mercedes Moné. I'm looking forward to that as well. So for her to give gracious towards obviously the likes of AEW to use the namesake of Owen Hart, you know, I'm all for it. But when I was on about the likes of Will Ospreay, will he actually win that to prove his point, or with the likes of Hangman Adam Page to prove his point? You know, I couldn't believe when I watched the episode of Dynamite only last night that I was watching an episode of Dynamite that Will Ospreay was technically putting Hangman Adam Page over, even though the likes of Hangman's been around the company for a while. But to me, it felt like he was putting him over. That proves how genius that Will Ospreay is. And he's got that aura that he's been around for a while. And you literally can say that, yes, he's been a while. You know, if he went to the likes of WWE, they'll copy and paste him with probably a new gimmick, or if you're lucky enough, he'll have his own name. Knowing Will Ospreay's probably copyrighted his own name, which is handy, because I do not like when certain things like WWE do, like when they do the copy and paste. Yes, they do not let them be themselves to a point, but then they change the name. You know, it seems like they're starting from fresh, what they built up for like X amount of years. Like Will Ospreay's been on the indie scene. He was on the indie scene, like I met him, I think it was 2013 I met him, or maybe 2014, I can't remember which, you know, because I lose track. But it seems like they don't appreciate the existence from when they've actually worked for other companies. You know, the only time when they ever highlight the work with other company, as of late, you know, when the likes of TKO, they did the merger with WWE and UFC when Brock Lesnar was around. They started highlighting Brock Lesnar's achievements in the UFC. That's a prime example. Same with Ronda Rousey. But they didn't highlight working elsewhere. Now they've got the working relationship, we will say working relationships with the like of TNA. They're highlighting what wrestlers have done in TNA. You know, they don't acknowledge the achievements, what they've done in other companies, that if they haven't got a working relationship. You know, and that's what I feel hard done by. You know, when I look at the way WWE is, and I think that's why Will Ospreay didn't want to go to that realm overall, not just because of the family values, but then when I look at the likes of Will Ospreay, right? I look at him larger life character in the likes of AEW, doing fantastically for the company, right? And the thing is, like I say, with this final of the tournament, it's so unpredictable where it's going to go. Is it going to be the likes of Hangman Adam Page winning Will Ospreay, so he doesn't win that tournament, so it leaves him to some other door of venture towards obviously maybe Summer Spectacular winning the title then? Because at the end of the day, obviously the winner of that tournament will go advance to obviously having a title match at All in July in Texas. So I look at the bigger spectrum of it. I look at the likes of Will Ospreay. Does he deserve a title? Yes, but does he need a title? I wouldn't mind, but truthfully, I'll be honest with you, I feel like he doesn't need a title to prove who he is, because I feel like when I look at the likes of way wrestling's been done for many years, and I still don't get it why they give certain people the title. Yeah, because they've done a lot for the business, you can actually say, for that company. But with the likes of AEW, the way they do things, it's like you look at the way AEW's done at the moment. The current champion's John Moxley. He's going to face Samoa Joe. Yeah, fair enough. Does Samoa Joe need that elevation towards that title? Did John Moxley need that title? Even though, yeah, fair enough, he's boosted people that anal and obsessive of it. Did they actually, the likes of what, boost the ratings in the likes of AEW to a point? Yeah, but does the likes of the title make the wrestler who they are? No, because the wrestler makes that belt worthwhile more than the other way around. When you've literally had the mid-card title, then you used to progress. If you're good enough with that mid-card title and the company feels like you're ready for the main title of that brand, I feel like that's what it should be all about, like the old school way. You know, not because they've sold X amount of merch, not because they're the face of the company or something like that. That's WWE's entity, I feel. That's why the likes of John Cena, yeah, he's still technically the face of the company, even though they've actually, within the last year, tried to make Cody Rhodes the face of the company. You know, the full front person that sells X amount of merch and everything like that. Because of the hard work of the professional wrestler that's done the grind. You know, but when I look at the likes with AEW, does Will Ospreay need that? No, he's one of those larger than life characters that made him who he is. He didn't need to be solidified in wrestling history that he's won the world championship. It would be great if he had it, don't get me wrong, but does he actually need it? I personally feel like he doesn't, because he's one of those larger life characters. Because I feel like when you've got that belt around your waist, yes, you've got a target on your back, but yes, you've done the grind. Yes, it shows the company appreciates you. But the problem is where I feel when you've actually got that sort of belt, I feel like you're literally one of those, how to put it, people that is going to be thrown down our throats, made to follow them, made to support them. You know, that solidifies that. Why do you think the likes of John Cena got so popular, then people got wise to it? That's an example. Same with the likes of Cody Rhodes. Even though he still has that fan base, but he has not had that progression that long compared to like John Cena. This heel run, yes, is a bit lackluster at the moment. It feels like it's been a clusterfuck for the WWE to work around, obviously, what happened at WrestleMania going forward towards Backlash. Yes, we've got Randy Orton versus John Cena for the numerous of times, but that's what I mean. It just appeals for the casual fan, but the die-hard fan in me, I feel like the likes of Will Ospreay, he's a larger than life character that doesn't need a belt to prove who he is. because he's done that on his own back. That's why I give AEW a lot of credit for what they did, because when they brought him in, they knew he was a big time player, and they literally treated him like a big time player straight away from the word go, like opening the door. And that's not me bashing AEW, that's giving them credit. You know, that's why I like him in the way he's portrayed himself in the likes of AEW. You know, it's not like the Forbidden Door scenario that people class it as. That's just me being honest, as an honest wrestling fan that I am, that I respect what AEW have done for the likes of Will Ospreay. And it's the thing is, since he's been in the company, they've improved so much. You know, the biggest hit was when they lost Cody Rhodes. Then they invested so much money to get CM Punk in the company. When they lost CM Punk, that was a massive hit. But it was a perk in the long run. It was an eye-opener when people literally turned their heads and looked at AEW. Oh, they do actually mean business. They don't care about the sales. They don't care about the merchandise. They don't care about this, and this to make money off his name. Because they could have easily kept him around even now. They could have kept him around. And people literally went on social media. Yeah, fair enough, they didn't invest about the ticket. They didn't care about the ticket sales, you know. They didn't care about pay-per-view buy rates. At least one thing in 2025, they booked smaller venues, you know. Because at the end of the day, they were booking those big venues to compensate for the CM Punk fans that have basically supported him from day one. Not because he was in the WWE, I meant like Ring of Honor, short stint in TNA. He built that fan base up himself, and he's got those fans yet again in the likes of WWE, which we never thought in a million years would actually happen. But I give them credit where it's due. They're pretty much, I was expecting the way they treated CM Punk is the same way I thought if Will Ospreay went to WWE. But I can understand his family values and all that lot for not going to that brand. So when I was on about like the likes of Will Ospreay, he does not need a title to prove who he is. It's great if he gets one, but he's done so much for AEW. He's got people watching the product, investing in the product. Even though I've been watching since 2019, I've seen the influx of people talking positive towards AEW. Yes, I'll admit, not of it has always been plain sailing, but don't forget this company's not been around that long. It's ironing out the creases, doing the right from the wrong at long last. And that's why I give them full credit for what they're actually doing. They're making household names that people want to talk about. The likes of not Brian May, that's from Queen, I do apologise, Mariah May, when she was facing Toni Storm. People got talking about that in a positive light. For women's wrestling, for a while, that people weren't talking how great women's wrestling was. That was thanks to Toni Storm and Mariah May that did that. Then you actually had the tag team match that people were talking about between FTR and the Young Bucks. When they faced each other, it was a different story. You know? They brought in legends to get people to cast eye into the product. Look at when they brought Adam Copeland, aka Edge, aka Cope. You know, they brought him into the company, into the fold, to get the casual eyes that have known that Edge has bought his own sort of business to the entity of AEW, and it's worked. Christian Cage is another one. The role that he's playing in AEW is not that often in the ring, if at all recently. He's playing that father figure for Nick Wayne. You know, he's elevating that young star. At least one thing with AEW, they know how to bring these old school wrestlers in to nurture the young talent that has been overlooked by WWE or wanted by WWE and told them to fuck off. You know, you look at the likes of Samoa Joe in Ops. He's got I could not pronounce one guy's name, I do apologise. To elevate him, as well as he's got the likes of Powerhouse Hobbs to elevate, you know, to nurture. You know, I feel like, yeah, Powerhouse Hobbs has when he's been working with the likes of AEW, I feel like, yeah, it's been hard done by for him, but they found a new lease of life for him. and obviously the likes of Hook being elevated last year, you know, to stratosphere that people liked. You know, got other people talking, not because he's Taz's young lad, no, it's because he's built up that craft. He's got that fan base. They bring these legends in to elevate the next level superstars to stand up to the level, to rival a company. It doesn't matter about ratings. It doesn't matter about that. At least one thing with AEW, they've proven people wrong. I feel like AEW's done the right way about doing things with working relationships. And that's just me being honest. Because they've not made them to speak English. I've spoke about this on my hot take towards certain things in the wrestling world. But this, they've not forced them to speak English for New Japan Pro Wrestling. What gives them the right to do so? You know? You know, I know it sounds daft to say, but when I look at WWE, yeah, fair enough, one of the most over wrestlers at the moment, believe it or not, Gran Americano is a hot take, a piss take towards American wrestling. I find that offensive, technically. It's like equivalent to where people used to get pissed off, where the likes of I know the world's PC now, so I'm surprised people are not offended by that. It's perfectly fine, but it's perfectly fine for a white guy to paint his face white. I mean black, sorry. You know? It's a... That's what I mean, and people find him entertaining. Yeah, don't get me wrong, he's a good talented wrestler, but it's that equivalent, you know, and the way you sugarcoat it, it's a racist attack, and that's just me being honest. You know, but that's what I mean. It's like when you look at the likes of AEW, they're not taking that risk, that entertainment. They do storyline, but they focus more in the ring than the storyline. They let the storyline build up in the ring. You know, they do certain things what worked. I would say, if people are knocking AEW, people used to compare this to WCW. I think this is technically, some parts of it reminds me of the Attitude Era that people raved about. You know, it's like when I've said before, blood is needed in certain match types to help to sell the pain, to help to sell the suffering. You know, to make people understand of it, and that's just me being honest with you. You know, this is what AEW gives. And that's why I feel like with AEW at the moment, they've got bright young talent coming through. Spinball Mike Bailey, you know, that's the name just pops into my head. You know, they've already had the 4 pillars that originally started the OG version in 2019. Each year it progresses that people are talking about certain wrestlers, you know. But the one thing that really baffles me when people say AEW sucks, but I won't mind MJF in WWE. That's an example. Same with Darby Allin. Same with Sammy Guevara. What? Why are you saying the product sucks if you like a certain wrestler to be in the rival company to the likes of WWE? You must have watched the product, enjoyed the product. Why do you think you're mentioning these wrestlers' name? You've watched clips on TikTok or YouTube. You know, that's just me being honest with you. Why would you even attempt to say it, even in comments or doing videos about it? You know, like I've said, if you are promoting a product, you are promoting a product. You're promoting a product even if it's a good way or bad way. But if you're going to be sitting there every single week on social media saying AEW sucks, you must be watching the product to think it sucks. All I can say is let them fans watch the product. You know, they've got so much diverse on their roster. It's unbelievable. From at least one thing, they get tag teams right that are already not makeshift ones. They're actually naturally been working together as a tag team. Same with the women's division. You know, They've got natural gifted women already, and they're signing a couple more. Same with the males. It's just such an eye opener and refreshing. And I'm watching it, and I'm glad when it surpassed the likes of Nitro, because they can't say it's like Nitro no more, because AEW's literally lasted a lot longer on that. This reminds me of back in the TNA days in 08-09 time. You know, when it was good. I've not checked out TNA since it went to, do I dare say it, when they did the working relationship with WWE. But I know about certain talent, and I'll say this, and I'll say this many times on my TikTok videos. I've said it on this very platform. Jordan Grace is wasted. Yeah, fair enough, she's got a #1 contender shot of NXT Battleground. But do you really think that Jordan Grace was worthy of being in NXT? No, I feel like she should be main roster. The only reason why, because I feel like her size, her physique, her talent is missing in the women's roster. You know? Great, you put those women that have gone up to the main roster, because you're making the women the focal point at the moment, because you want people to invest into Evolution pay-per-view. As soon as that's been and gone, they'll probably look to have one match a week. You know, I've said that's what I like about Raw at the moment, but they need to execute it a lot better. Some of the storylines that WWE has to offer for the women, the likes of Becky Lynch and Lyra, is that it throws me. It throws me what they're actually doing. You know, and that's just me being honest. You know, and I know this video is meant to be all about Will Ospreay, but I'll tell you one thing. I feel like when I look at the likes of AEW, Dynamite, not watch Collision, don't get me wrong, because obviously, like I've mentioned, that obviously the day it was on, the same with Rampage. Occasionally I did occasionally watch one episode if I could catch it, but I didn't watch it religiously like I've watched Dynamite since 2019. I've not missed an episode. I missed it live, don't get me wrong, a few times because of other commitments getting in the way, but I've got around to watching them. You know, I've never felt that far behind. I'm only like probably a one episode behind, but no, I made myself all the way to obviously what I watched last night, and I was glad I stayed up to watch that. But like I'm saying, I've said this many times, Dark Elevation should come back and use that technically as another stepping stone with the wrestlers that we don't see on a weekly basis. Yes, they could do that for Ring of Honor, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you could do that like as a pre-show sort of thing onto YouTube, like you originally did that format on there, but these weren't broadcasted live. But yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like I feel like when I look at the likes of way Dark Elevation, yeah, you may think I'm literally comparing it to the way WWE do NXT. It's fine, that's your own opinion, but I mean, like, have their own. I'm on about not to use that. I mean, like, because they've got that many plethora of talent on the main roster that they don't hardly see on TV. That's why I feel that you should have that entity to watch. You know, even if it's like a pre-show before live on YouTube for the likes of Dynamite, and then Collision for obviously Dark Elevation. I wouldn't mind that, you know, because at the end of the day, AEW for me all the way. Why do you think I've done a long video on my money is worth every penny going into that company? And that's just me being honest. But anyway, guys, I hope you all are well, and thank you ever so much for making me up to double figures. This is the road to 100 subscribers. I can't thank you enough. Until next time, guys, catch you later.